thank you guys all again for being here. Obviously good to see everybody. Not too good, because I know we don't like to see each other this often, but I look forward to a productive discussion. And, I think we saw from our board meeting last night, there's one, and then there's 1A, and one is obviously students, and 1A is teachers. And I think working together, we'll be able to come up with something that satisfies both needs equally, because our teachers are exhausted, and they need to make sure they have a calendar moving forward that works for them, and our students' needs are always paramount. So I appreciate everybody being here.
All right, so thank you for that. Welcome, Mr. Boyer. And I also want to share my appreciation for the time and the commitment that you've made to this work. We've gone through several iterations of the calendar, and we have landed for the most part on our restart calendar, on our year-round calendar, and on our calendars for our early colleges, as well as our restart pre-K calendars. And again, just for folks who might be watching this for the very first time, we as a district have 7 different calendars, which I think is slightly an accomplishment because we used to have 9. So we have reduced the number of calendars. Today, I'd like for us to spend time, again, looking at the traditional calendar. Quite a bit has changed with the drafts that are in front of you since the last time that we met, and I want to share with you some of the rationale that goes into that. We last time had conversation and discussion and had come to the agreement that we needed really to look at adding additional days to the calendar, given the lost learning opportunity for our students. We want to make sure that we are being very intentional in recouping that time for students. So we had already made the decision to increase the number of days with the calendar. But even with that, we still had huge disparities between the number of days that were allotted to the first semester and the number of days that were allotted to the second semester. So the 2 drafts that you have in front of you that have been named Draft 6 and Draft 7 really do a good job of balancing that out. With Draft 6, you'll notice that the days in first quarter, second quarter are a little bit more elongated than the days in third quarter, fourth quarter. But in Draft 7, you'll notice that first quarter has 42 days, second quarter has 46, third quarter has 42, third quarter has 42, fourth quarter has 46. The reason for the second and the fourth quarter to have additional days is to take into consideration the lost instructional days due to testing, because we know we have end-of-course testing that are state required, and then we also have teacher-created end-of-course tests as well. So that's the difference between those 2 semesters. But for the most part, they're really, really balanced between these 2 calendars. The second thing that I'll say that you'll notice that is a difference between these 2 calendars is that in Draft 6, you start the December break on December 22nd. So it is a much condensed break. And in Draft 7, you start the December break for students on December 20th. There are 2 teacher work days that are there. They have been undesignated on these 2 particular calendars, so those would be days that teachers would be able to take leave if they had that annual leave. But that's a difference between the 2 calendars that are worth noting. And then also another difference in the calendars, if you take a look at where spring break falls, one falls before Easter, the other one falls after Easter. One includes, both include the Monday after Easter. One includes the week before and then that Monday, and then the other one does not. And so I think for the most part, those are the significant differences between these 2 calendars. The other thing that we'll need to talk about this evening is really graduation. If we really, want to place graduation on the calendars, we historically have, but I know that we are looking at doing graduation differently. Historically, we've done it on essentially on the day that, we end the school year, and we do it on that Saturday, and it's start early, finish late. All 4 of our traditional high schools graduate. But we moved away from that this past year with a lot of success. And then, of course, the year that we had school closure, we had very different looking graduations. So that was a tradition that if someone would have asked me, I don't think that folks would have thought about making changes to. And, we see that we can make changes, that we can make breaks. So again, what's driving the changes that you see in front of us, because it's really the need to balance those semesters, and then also to make sure that we're incorporating professional development opportunities, teacher workday opportunities throughout the school year, as opposed to just having them front-loaded throughout the year. So again, you still see a significant number of days on the front end of the calendar, and that's because we know that we're going to have trainings associated with our current curriculums. We know that we're going to have trainings associated with our new one-to-one transition, as well as other technology that we're going to need to build capacity around in our district. And we also know that addressing those state-required trainings as well as social-emotional learning is going to be critical at the front end of the year. So we've given quite a few days there. Again, when we move those days into the year, even though we've adjusted our start and end times, we're at the very end in terms of when it can occur. If the more teacher work days we move into the year, understand that we're moving student days out of the calendar. But again, we do have that flexibility. So I've said quite a bit. I'd love to now give time and space for you to share, and maybe we can start with draft 6, those things that people want to lift up and say that I think this is something that's important, and then also things that folks might have a question about, and then we'll do that same thing with draft 7. So we'll start with draft 6 if that's okay. And I'll make this a little bit larger. And just as a reminder, our start and end dates remain the same. I did have a few folks who asked me about whether or not New Hanover County Schools would be eligible for an early start waiver. We would not, because we've not experienced inclement weather to the degree that would make us eligible for a waiver. So we're not able to start our year earlier than when we are.
So in draft 6, how many instructional days are there in semester 1?
So in semester 1, in draft 6, there are 45 days in quarter 1 and 46 days in quarter 2.
And then semester 2 was, sorry, I know you said this.
No, you're fine. You're wonderful. 43 in quarter 3 and 43 in quarter 4.
Okay, and then for draft 7, do you have those numbers as well?
Draft 7, 42 in semester 1, 46 in semester 2, 42 in quarter 1, 46 in quarter 2, 42 in quarter 3, 46 in quarter 4. And again, the difference there is giving some additional days for the testing that we know happens in the second and fourth quarter of the semester.
think the biggest problem that I see with 6 is the 22nd, December 22nd, that late
Okay?
start. You know, that's a tough one.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, and in draft 7, we have the 20th being the first day out for students. So that would give us a little bit more of a cushion.
I guess my question is, I almost wonder, is it better to get those, is it better to have that short week on the front end or come back in the middle of the week on the back end? I know everybody complains about that January 2nd date. So I don't know if anybody would be interested in like that merger of the 20th, taking those from 7, 20, and 21 if we wanted to start later, and being off the 3rd and the 4th, since it's still that same semester, we're not messing with the days and the imbalance.
So moving on draft 7, moving December 20th and 21st to January 3rd and 4th.
I don't, that would just be an idea.
I mean,
but
that's the question.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Or maybe just moving 20, taking 20 away and putting 3 out there.
Okay? Because that does not impact the number of student days.
Right.
It ends up adding 1 additional day to the first semester, 1 less day in the second semester, but I don't think that's significant because we're not losing a student day.
Would that, if we're talking
Yeah, it would still be in the second quarter.
second semester, it'd still be in the
you
first
have-
semester?
You're exactly right. My apologies.
But
Yeah, so it does not shift the semester or the quarter. All of it's still in the fourth. You're correct.
I guess that would be just one recommendation I would make was, you know, make school end on the 21st and begin on the 3rd rather than the 2nd.
Okay? So students would come back January 4th. Their first day out would be January 21st.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's on draft 7.
Dr. Smith, can I
Yes.
ask, this may not be the time to ask this, but getting feedback from the traditional high school principals and from teachers, I feel like I do need to bring up, since it looks like that these are the 2 that we're going to be choosing from. It's going to be a really big problem. Right now, our kids that are going to Cape Fear and UNCW, we have currently, there are, for this fall, there were 2,046 courses that our students are taking. And the spring, right now, it's at 1,235, and we're still enrolling students in for those. Another issue that we have is the overlap of the students, and I'm just going to read one of the calendars have students finishing up their dual classes in December and starting their second semester classes in January, but their high school classes will overlap with these both semesters, and then in the spring, they'll have to miss high school classes to take Cape Fear or UNCW exams, and then same thing, they'll have to miss the Cape Fear classes, and some of those classes, they get graded on attendance. If they miss, you know, they're penalized for missing regardless if it's a high school class or not. Another problem that we run into is when the community college finishes, I mean, if we don't finish in December with an end date, they are not allowed to enroll. If they are an early grad, they cannot enroll unless they have a graduation date that has already happened. So we have kids that will be early graduates that will not be able to enroll in college because they will not have their high school diploma. So that's, I mean, those are big concerns that we have. We have a lot of students. I can speak right now at Hoggard, we have 575 classes that are taken between Cape Fear and UNCW. And then these are the numbers that I just read with, you know, they're 4,577 courses this year or last year. And then this year, you know, right now, we are still enrolling them, and we have already, you know, 1,235 for the county. So I'm speaking for the high school principals because this really is going to impact a large number of our students. And I think it's unfair for those that are early grads not to be able to go to college.
So how do other counties with dual enrollment programs go about the same thing? Because I'm assuming I don't have that experience in other places, but is there, when I was in the Superintendent Advisory Council meeting, it was said that schools and the colleges or community college can have a conversation and discuss how to serve the students based on the calendar. I don't know that.
I teach at Cape Fear. I was actually going to suggest, I think, and this is long past due, I've been trying to get it going for a long time. I think we can work out some of this with a directive to Cape Fear faculty, a policy from the community college level. But Dr. Smith, if you'd be interested, I think it would be great to pull together a meeting with, if you volunteer, certainly a counselor, myself, the president of the community college, and Dr. Smith. I mean, I feel like some of this can be worked out through a conversation. The problem is a lot of times there's a communication backlog between our entities, and certainly nobody's fault, but there's got to be a way for our college faculty. We service so many of our New Hanover County school students. They're vital to Cape Fear, and I'm sure if we tell them, listen, this is what we have, students in 9 other grades that need services. You're very important, but we really have to figure out a way for our community college faculty to work with us. I think they'd be receptive to that type of conversation.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that suggestion, and I very much agree and would very much welcome that opportunity to sit down and navigate that. And, in Principal Paul Bill, I know that this is impactful for our high schools. And so our challenge really is to find a calendar that we balance the needs of everyone across the district. The calendars that we're putting in front of you, I think really represents that. And even though we've got, more than 2,000 courses being taken, probably around 700, 800, maybe even 1,000 children, because a lot of times these children are taking multiple courses. And, some of that will be able to mitigate through their schedules if they're, community college courses are occurring, during block 1 and 2 for first semester, trying to schedule them in the same block and have similarities across that. But for some children, this definitely is going to represent a conflict. But we, again, have to be responsive to the overall needs of the district and not find ourselves making decisions just more or less out of convenience. So I think let's dig into a solution for those students. Let's dig into a solution for our high school students that are taking those courses. And let's problem solve around this, because we don't want to, cause harm, but we also want to make sure that we're bringing forth the very best calendars that we can that are responsive to the needs of all the students that we have in the district. With our early colleges, we have the benefit of really designing a specialized calendar for them. And, it's the same thing that we do for Restart. That's the same thing that we do for year-round. With traditional, we're doing the whole continuum, the whole K-12 span, and we need calendars that really reflect the needs of all of our students. And so what we've heard very loudly and very clearly from our teachers, even our secondary teachers, is that this really condensed first semester is very challenging for them. It's challenging for them in terms of covering the content. It's challenging for them in terms of having time to plan or flexibility around, professional development needs. Not to, and thank goodness we didn't have any inclement weather this first semester. I can't imagine how devastating that would have been. But again, I think the calendars we're looking at really do represent something that is much, much more balance. And, and really are the calendars that we had for a very long time prior to, actually just last year, because last year was the first year that we made that change in that transition. But thank you for bringing that forward, and thank you for your suggestion about how we can lead this to a resolution so that we're addressing the needs of those students as well. Any other question, comment? And thank you, Abby, for sharing the additional teacher feedback. I think we need to invite all of these folks to be a part of this committee in the future. They have some really innovative ideas and very thoughtful reflection, and I appreciated having the opportunity to read through all of this. I think where folks sometimes really get stuck and it's hard for them to understand is that we are legislated by law when we start, and know that we can't start any earlier than when we start, and we can't end any later than when we end. And so a lot of the suggestions that we get actually operate outside of those parameters. And I think that's hard for folks. And I think the reason that it's hard is because, I don't think people think that naturally that you would have school start and end times legislated by state law. But in North Carolina, that is our reality. Yes.
I just had a quick question on 7. Do we want 31, or I didn't know.
Do we want what?
Do we want 31 as a designated teacher workday, Halloween on October, or would that be the first?
So that follows the
End of the grading period.
End of the grading
does
period
it?
on the 28th.
I see, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so we weren't just giving that
Got it.
just because.
Got it.
Although it kind of looked like it.
I didn't see
And if
that
that
one.
gives us a little bit of, good graces with students, we'll say, yeah, we gave you Halloween off.
If we could find some way to get a workday in February on draft 7, that would be good.
Okay, so in order to do that, and more likely than not, we would be eliminating a student day, but we could surely move a workday from the 17th of August into February.
And I think we would be eliminating one, but as draft 7 is, it looks a lot better than the last, number-wise. So it would go down from 46 that's quarter 3. Yeah, it would go down from 42 in quarter 3 to 41, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and we could shift those, let's see. We could shift the end date by 1, more likely than not. So if we really wanted to be sticklers and balance out a little bit more, we could shift the start of the 4th quarter. But what day in February?
See, interim reports come out the 28th, so I'd say the week prior.
24th?
When's President's
The
Day?
20th,
When's
President's Day.
20?
Well, I think that's when it's,
So the 20th is a teacher work day. And then we're going to eliminate the 17th as a teacher work day.
In August.
So August 17th goes away as a teacher work day, and we add the teacher work day in February on the 20th. And then we were starting 4th semester on the, on the 28th. We could start 4th semester on the 27th. Let's see. And we could make our designated workday on the 24th. Now, moving a lot of things all at the same time.
What were you just changing, LaShawn?
So to balance the semesters, we would have the 4th 9 weeks begin on March 27th, and then March 24th becomes the designated teacher workday, and March 23rd becomes the end of the grading period.
Gotcha.
So what happens then is you maintain the 42 days in your third quarter, and you go to 45 days in your fourth quarter, and you end up with 175 school days, student days. And I don't think we need to shift interim reports for one day.
How many days are in our calendar right now?
So the current
this year,
calendar, we
for
had
this year.
171. So then we do the math, minus November 12th, we're now at 170. I was actually doing the math at the board meeting last night. I was like, where's that extra day? Oh, I know.
That's student days?
Those are student days, yes, ma'am.
And how many student hours?
So that was where I was leading with my question.
So student hours, and I want to say off the top of my head, maybe 1,082. I think the original number was like 1,100. But what I'll say is, that's really an estimate. For us to give you something that's exact, I would really need to go to principals and say, tell me how long your transition periods are, tell me how long your lunch periods are, and then back that out. But we do use, as an average, 6.5 hours of the day. And then, of course, we've added an additional 10 minutes really as a cushion because of the decrease in the instructional time.
So that was going to be my question, is if we go back to this calendar, would we go back to 3:30?
So I think that's a conversation that we can have as a part of our district. I don't think it's dependent necessarily on the calendar.
So,
I think it is dependent on buses though, pretty seriously,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Well, that's why I would say that would be a conversation for the district. So we could, still look at the spacing and time, but we would not need that time in the same way that we
Right.
needed it in the past.
Right.
so
But
when you're
yes,
calculating the number, is it 185 days or the 1,025 hours or whatever it
Yes.
is? So what's the number of hours, when you calculate the 175 days times, what's the hours? Is it 6 you do, or 6.5, what is it?
so on average, we do 6.5.
Okay.
But again, if we wanted to have an exact number, really and honestly, I would have to go back and find out how much time we give to transitions, how much time we give to lunches. So sometimes that time creeps. We start with 3-minute transitions, but, now it's become a 4-minute transition.
But we also need to reflect too that just because we say it's a 7.5 hour day or 6.5 hour day, whatever, not all of that is genuinely instructional time.
Well-
There is a lot of time built in that isn't instructional.
Well, and that's why we calculate it on 6.5 as opposed to 7.5. Because we know we've got transition times. And as I said, we would go back and have schools report out to us, are you having 3-minute transitions or 4-minute transitions? Because all of that has to be backed out, because you're exactly right. We cannot count that as instructional time.
Just as a brief estimate,
Yes.
if you used 1,082 hours and factored in a 6.5 hour day, just as an added benefit, that gives us 8.5 days of calendar flexibility. I mean, that's almost enough to absorb a major storm, or, not Florence, maybe a Florence, God forbid, either way. But it's almost enough to really, that's a lot of built-in flexibility with regards to weather without taking away spring break or other holidays.
So, and the way we look at that is the minimum. And so,
Sure.
we don't want to offer and provide to our students the minimum. So, again, hopefully we won't find ourselves experiencing a storm or inclement weather that would have us outside of school. But there is, a little bit of flex time that we would have in there. But I would think that if we missed 8 days, we would really want to think about how we could recover that so that we're making sure that we're meeting the needs of our students instructionally. But you are right that we do have some cushion within our calendar.
Dr. Smith,
Yes.
so when you did the whole February 20th becoming a teacher workday, taking it from August 17th. On March, you actually took away another student day instead of adding a student day. Because you went backwards and you should have gone forwards.
So let me see what we're talking about. So in March, end of the grading period would have been the.
Should be on the 28th now. I mean, should be
Oh,
on
you're,
the, should be.
yes, thank you for that.
forward.
So we want to go forward.
So it should be the 25th now is the end of grading, or the 27th is the end of grading period. And the 28th
So the
is
teacher
work
work day is on the 28th, in the grading period is the 27th.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
And Dr. Smith, am I correct? The magic number is 215 days, right?
So we calendar 215 days.
That teachers are working, either workday or student days,
Yes.
teachers are working 215
Yes,
days.
yes. The term we use typically is that we calendar 215.
And that is this year as well, 215 days.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, yes. Now, we compensate teachers for 220, but we only calendar 215.
Okay. I don't know how or when or in what, I mean, I guess really by principles, but I think teachers need to know that they are working 215 days, but they are compensated for 220. Because that's one of the things that I've heard recently about the 10 additional minutes. While they appreciate that 4-day cushion, if we don't use those 4 days, then they perceive that as we're working 4 additional days and not being compensated for it. Because I don't think that they realize that they are being compensated for it. So, I mean, just that knowledge piece I think would be
Well,
helpful.
I appreciate that, and I think we can surely, look at how we message this. I don't know that all teachers feel that way. So I don't want to make any blanket or broad statements around that. But for those who do, we definitely want them to feel appreciated and understand the value and the commitment of their work. And what I'll say is, and I think we all know and agree with this, teachers work long and far beyond anything that we've got calendared or scheduled. I typically get off, 5:15, 5:30, and I'm driving out, and I can go by elementary schools and still see cars in the parking lot. And aren't a lot of middle schools on my way home, but I'm sure if I were to drive by a middle school, there would still be cars in the parking lot. So I think we can support teachers in with the messaging and understanding. But our teachers work far beyond anything that we calendar for them. And we appreciate and are grateful for their commitment. All right, any other discussion?
So,
Yes.
and forgive me, I may not have been paying attention, I was reading an email. Graduation, traditional high school graduation, what was the, was
So
there-
that's the last thing. So we need to have a conversation around that. So historically, well, traditionally, let me put it that way. Traditionally, up until the last 2 years, we have graduated, in this kind of stacked method at Trash Coliseum. We've had 2 years where that has not been the experience, and we've gotten positive reviews on both of those years. And so the question is, what do we want our graduations to look like? And I think it's really important that this be a decision that's made by our schools. And so for my suggestion is we indicate the week of graduations, and then we determine exactly when those graduations are going to occur. So on this calendar, very broadly, they have them June 17th, but our last day for students is actually on June 9th. So we could look at the week of June 5th for our graduations and have that be reflected on the calendars, and then schools share with us their schedule.
When does Trask need to know what our plans are?
When does Trask need to know?
Yeah, if we were gonna go back to Trask, when would they, I mean, aren't we coming up on that?
So we've reached out to Trask Coliseum to see their availability, because again, this is, the timeframe we are operating in is very different than timeframes we've operated in the past. Prior to COVID, we would start that process, probably having a contract in place by January.
I'm trying to do it by November.
Okay.
So, yeah, so we would work on and have the contract, and then, you know, there are different vendors that we would engage with.
Principal Bill, the last time we talked, you said you really liked, and I loved it. I loved what
we
you
loved
were
it.
able to do. I loved what the other schools were able to put together. Is that still your?
Yeah, we would like to do it at Hanover on our football field and have all of our graduates out there and do one graduation.
And then what's the plan if it rains?
Then we've already talked about that. We would go ahead and have chairs rented and have set up in the Bowles Gym. And we would have color-coded tickets that if we gave 6 tickets for an outdoor graduation, then 2 of those tickets would be colored differently. And so we would be able to have 2 graduates go into the Bowles Gym. I mean, the graduates plus
family members,
2
yeah.
into the Bowles Gym. And then hopefully it won't rain, and I think we could accommodate each person having like 6. Right now we have 438 graduates for this year.
I think that's so compelling though, because I think students have good memories, a lot of them, about their football field. And it sends a different message, I think, than in some stadium they've never been in before. We did ours from the football field too, and I think it's a nice moment for parents and families too.
And it went, I mean, you were at our graduation, and I mean, and
I was up
Ms.
there, yep.
Retson was there. We had a good time. The kids loved it. They could go take pictures, you know, after graduation on the campus. They could do it ahead of time. Just depends, you know, what time of evening we were to do it. Yeah.
I think it definitely allows for much greater personalization. We definitely saw that with our drive-through graduations. Just, you know, people really appreciated just the flexibility that it gave at Trask. And Dr. Burns, I know you haven't had this experience with us. It was a much more formal occasion with a whole bunch of rules and a lot of security and a lot of parking. It was really hard to deal with the parking. So, so what I hear the committee suggesting and saying is that we want to have reflected in that week of June 5th, that graduations would occur that week. And then we would bring out a schedule specific to schools.
I don't know that it would impact, but that's EOC week for high schools.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, I mean, if you want to speak to that, Mary Paul, as far as staff and things like that.
Right. And it might impact that too. We just hope we wouldn't have any seniors that would be taking an EOC. And if we did, maybe have to give it to them earlier. But,
So the graduations couldn't all be on the same day, like on it couldn't be on a Saturday.
So
Would schools have that choice on which day? Because I'm
So-
thinking during
so-
the school week would be very difficult.
So graduation, so you could have multiple graduations on the same day. What we used to do, they were all on the same day at the same location. So you'd have multiple locations, but they could be, so, you know, if we started graduations on Wednesday, you might have a Wednesday night, a Thursday night, and a Friday night graduation. It might be this high school, this high school, this high school. This high school has one ceremony, this high school chooses to have 2.
Okay.
And I would assume the non-traditionals would, the early colleges, they would continue.
Yes, they've got,
Okay. Yeah, they're
you know,
fine.
within their calendar, when their graduations occur, yeah. All right. Any additional
Yeah, I
feedback?
do.
Yes.
There was one other question that was brought up by our counseling department, and they had talked with some other, they had talked to other counselors. was the fact of in January only having one teacher workday between semesters. And it's real hard to find out which kids possibly have failed classes and trying to redo schedules because we're starting all over again for second semester with classes, if there could possibly be 2 workdays.
Okay. So, looking again at draft 7, and I know, Mr. Bowyer, you made the suggestion of a teacher workday on January 3rd.
Yeah.
What about that teacher workday coming down to January 24th? And that way it would give them 2 days back-to-back to support the scheduling.
It's fine.
Thoughts about that?
It's absolutely fine.
So,
Implications for parents having to accommodate?
No.
So we'll move the January 3rd teacher workday to January 24th.
I will say as a parent, I think the only concern is going to be the fact that the kids are going to go to school Monday. They're going to be out Tuesday, Wednesday, and be expected to go back Thursday, Friday. I think you might have a little bit of a slack week for students that week.
So tell me again, when are we talking?
So if you have a teacher workday January 24th and 25th,
Oh.
you see they're going to school Monday, they're out Tuesday, Wednesday, and then they have to go back Thursday, Friday. I think that might,
Could we back up the end of that grading period one day? Is that possible?
So we could, so the grading period,
Because I think it's a really
and
good
Donna might
point.
need you to help me, make sure I don't go the wrong direction. Because,
See, the
I have
gra-
no sense of direction here.
Elizabeth, but what about EOCs, because that's gonna back them up too, isn't it?
yes, EOCs will be the last 5 days of the semester, whatever those 5 days are.
Okay.
And then also, excuse me, I'm losing my voice, but for those kids who are dually enrolled, the sooner we can get them finished with the first semester, the better. So, I mean, I would
So-
like for us to look towards the front of that week versus the end of that week.
So do teacher workdays the
23rd
January
and
23rd and 24th?
Yes,
And make the 20th the last day, is that what you're saying?
yes. So the end of the grading period would be the 20th.
So that means EOCs would be that week of the 16th, or actually, I guess,
Those
start the
start the
13th.
13th.
Yeah.
Ooh,
And then, teacher workday is the 24th and 25th.
So
No,
we're
no,
losing,
23rd,
23rd and
24th,
Yeah.
sorry.
so we're losing 1 instructional day in
which was
quarter
the
3.
quarter that had the most
I'm sorry,
anyway.
In
quarter
quarter
2.
two.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, because it had 46
Right.
now we're gaining more
nobody lost one in.
in the second quarter.
Yeah, you're gaining one. So you are gaining a day.
Yeah, I know it's a pain for our dual enrolled students, but I think,
Extra
you know,
days done.
don't underestimate the bargaining power that the school system has with the community college, because they really need, they count for ADM and our FTE.
Right.
So they need these students, and you're just asking instructors at the collegiate level to just be a little bit flexible during that week and just give some grace to their students. It's not a big ask, especially when it's a directive from an employer. I don't know if that's even an ask. It's sort of what they're supposed to.
And I think with
And we're
us,
half their FTEs.
yeah, and with us coordinating that for our students aren't gonna have to advocate for that as
Exactly.
individuals. We'll take care of that on the front end. So,
Yep.
yes. Okay?
Is that something that would be taken care of at the school level or at the?
No, the district.
Okay,
The
okay.
district will
That
take
was
care
my
of it.
question for all the counselors
So
trying to
we
figure
do
that
the
out.
same thing at UNCW?
Yeah.
It's UNCW, not just Cape Fear, correct?
Yeah, we would have those,
We can,
conversations
when's
with
Santa
them.
Rosa out of there? When's Santa Rosa out of there?
End of this year.
Any other questions or discussions?
Dr. Smith?
Yes.
So let's say we're looking at for traditional plan 7, draft 7, 7 right here, draft 7. So would I have leeway or time to discuss it with my staff? Because I was trying to match my spring break up with the traditional spring break. But as I go to look at to match it up now, it might not be beneficial to match it up because instead of having 4 weeks ready for the exams, that cuts me back down to 3 weeks.
So what we'll do is, for all the calendars that we've already kind of approved from our committee level, we'll reach out to those individual schools and see what changes they want to make. So, yeah, because typically we start this process with the traditional calendar, and then it drives the other calendars, just simply because we know we have families that are on multiple calendars, and we want there to be some alignment. So we will reach back out to CTEC and WEX, we'll reach back out to you guys, we'll reach back out to our year-round, and our restart to make sure the alignment that they were looking for still exists between the two calendars. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? So, would like to enter a motion that draft 7 with the specified changes, and we'll put all of those, we'll codify all those and bring those forth, be the calendar that we recommend to the board for our traditional school year for the 2022-2023 school year. So if I could get a second, we'll take in our very informal voting way on the calendar.
Second.
All right, thank you, sir. If you're in favor, if you can do that by raising your hand, just a show of hands if you're in favor of that. Anyone opposed to bringing this as the draft? All right. And also, please understand this process, it is just simply a recommendation. Our board can take a look at this and send it back to us for additional consideration or make recommendations and changes as well. But I do appreciate the time that you've given to this, the data that you've gathered, the insights that you've brought to this process. It's not a simplistic thing, and it's so important to serve as the foundational piece for how we build out our year, our instructional programs, how we serve our children. And so thank you for your commitment and your time on that. And so with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. For all the veterans that are in the room, thank you for your service. For all of you who are supporting veterans, thank you for your support of our veterans in our community. And I hope everyone has a wonderful, wonderful weekend and Wellness Day and Veterans Day.
Thank you.